Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Diaz, the Sustainability Planner for the City of Bowie. I want to thank you all for joining me today for the final episode of our Sustainability webinar series. Please put your questions in the Q&A box. I will get to them right after the slides, and I will also be sending a follow-up email to everyone with relevant links and data. Welcome to Reduce, Reuse, and Recycle. This is like a crash course on the 3 R's that everyone has heard of. Next, please. Okay, so if we break apart the city waste stream, we start to see the problem, but we also see areas for solutions. In 2020, 30,000 tons of waste were picked up, with 20,000 of them going straight to the landfill. That's about 69% of our waste right off the bat was trash sent to the landfill. Then we had another 15% of our waste be sent to Brown Station Recycling, but that's mostly large appliances that are broken down for their materials and bits and pieces, and then they're sent to the landfill. So really we're looking at about, 85% of everything picked up in 2020 was trash going to a landfill. The remaining piece of the pie is the 16%, and that's the recycling. So that was about 4,500 tons. However, if we break that apart, like the smaller image here, we see a little over 1,000 tons were wrong. They were either items that weren't actually recyclable or marketable, or they were contaminated. And I'll touch on that in a little bit about what that means. So in the end, only about 11% of everything that Public Works picked up from all of Bowie residents for the whole year was recycling. That could actually be sold in a marketable way to actually be turned into something new, which is the point of recycling. So the items need to be sold to someone who wants to buy them and create more product. So the question is, how much of that original 69% could have been recycled? How much could have been reused, composted, or kept out of the waste stream altogether? Landfills are super emitters of methane, a greenhouse gas. So if we work towards recycling better and wasting less, we reduce our emissions and we create more money for the city of Bowie through marketable recycling that we can sell. So where you see a blue star are the areas where, as citizens, we can all start to work to be better for Bowie. Try to get that 69 down and the 11 or 16 up. Next slide, please. Starting with reducing. How can we really reduce our usage when we live in a society of convenience? One way is to examine the numbers and to learn the facts behind the problem. So next slide, please. Okay, from this chart, we can see that plastic generation has absolutely exploded since it first came about in the 60s. You can also see that the vast majority of it is sent to landfills and not recycled. So you're looking at all of that gray. We need the gray to lessen and we need the blue to widen. And one way to do that is to reduce our usage and therefore lessen the demand. Next chart, please, or next slide, please. It is another chart. So looking at the numbers under 1960, compare them to 2018, which I've put in red here. And remember that these numbers are in thousands of tons and that it's just the United States. So once again, you see the amount generated and landfilled has exploded while the amount being recycled remains relatively low. So next slide, please. Okay, so keeping all that in mind, that's the main part of the issue. A huge part of it is plastic. So that's why I really want to drive that home. Some simple, realistic tips to help you reduce your usage. I get asked this all the time, so I really wanted to make a slide on this. Things like regifting, things that are gently used, especially when it comes to baby products. I find that to be a really easy opportunity. Books and things that you've barely used. You can wrap things sustainably or don't wrap them or put them in a bag that someone can use over and over and over again, because the vast majority of wrapping paper is not recyclable. You can opt for an e-card over a paper card. Some other tips: don't shop while you're hungry, cook at home, try out alternative feminine products. I'm obviously not going to get deep into that subject matter, but you can imagine there's a lot of single-use throwaway scenarios there. And that's not really reducing your usage, but there are ways that you can if you're interested in exploring them. Opting for glass and paper whenever possible. So if you're at the store and you see items that are in glass versus the plastic, opting for that. Same thing, opting for the paper bag, using a rag for cleaning instead of paper towels, because they're throw away. It's definitely not reducing your waste in any way. Whereas if you have a rag and then you can wash it, you continue reusing it. Avoiding paper plates. But this is not to make anyone feel bad if you use paper plates. There's a reason. There are situations that call for these things. Of course, occasionally you're going to use paper plates, but if you are sitting down every night and using paper plates, it's one area that if you rethink that and you try to do a little bit better on that one, you really would be reducing your waste by a lot. And then another realistic tip is buying a gallon of water. If you have an emergency stash of water in your house, a gallon is a lot better than a case of water, because when you have a case of water, you're much more apt to say, oh, I'm thirsty, I'm just going to grab one. And then, then you're faced with the choice of, do I recycle it or do I throw it away? So keeping it as a gallon, I'm sorry if you can hear that dog. Keeping it as a gallon makes you much more likely to use it only in the case of emergency. So, everyone's going to treat themselves to meals and new gifts and things, but the point is to take a look at the things in your life and areas that you can start to reduce and make different choices, specifically if the items are plastic. Okay, next, please. And when we do purchase, what can we do to reuse the items to keep them out of the landfill? Next slide, please. So here are some examples of the single-use plastics, meaning you use them once, maybe twice, and then you throw them out, versus the reusable versions. So I've tried to match them up here. One good tip that I like to give people is not opting for solo cups, the plastic solo cups, because they're just super wasteful, and there's a paper version of them. And I find that the price point is very comparable, whereas at times the eco-friendly or reusable option at times can be a bit of a higher price point. Sometimes paper cups, I've not run into that. So I always, whenever I can find them, I buy them, and I have them here for emergency stash. That way, if people ever need cups, if someone says, oh, I'll go get some for you, they're going to buy plastic. This way I'm prepared with the paper version that I can throw away, can be composted. So that's a quick go-to. I actually have some examples for the alternative and reusable lunch items I just wanted to show you that I use. I've never bought these before except for recently, and I love them. These are recyclable paper bags, and if you have kids, they can pick out the stickers that you stick them with every day. So that's really cool, and they work just fine. And then I should have put this closer to myself. And then I have things like this, that inside there's little compartments for the lunches, baggies like this that you get on Amazon. Yes, I have to hand wash them. I do not find that to be a nuisance, because it's something that I like to do and I feel good about doing. They come in, any number of sizes, and also Tupperware. So, I put my kids' fruit in little Tupperware things, and it's so easy, and I bring them home and I either line up the dishwasher or I hand rinse them, whichever, I'm doing. And I feel good knowing that I'm not generating waste, with the caveat that I do, of course, have an emergency thing of little plastic bags, but I buy that one and it's going to last me forever because I only use it, in rare cases. So those are just a few tips from me. Next, please. Okay, on to upcycling. So upcycling means turning an object that had one use into something new. And it's a fantastic way to reuse old items. So this picture here is an example, taking wine bottles and turning them into some sort of decor. Next, please. Here's a few more ideas. So many of them are geared towards kids and the environment. So it makes really fun and interesting opportunities for the kids. These are bottle caps on this butterfly, old newspapers, you see wine corks. I know a lot of them are like, when I say geared toward the environment, it's like, so if you have a 2 liter, you flip it upside down, you cut off what would be the bottom, and it can catch rain, and then you can pick it up and water your flowers with it. So it's like mini rain barrels. So that's if you had a birthday party or something and you had to buy something with plastic like soda or juice or something, you can keep it out of your waste stream by upcycling it or reusing it in some way. So I'll make sure I send out a list of upcycling ideas for kids and things if anyone's interested. Next, please. And before I move on to recycling, I just want to once more reiterate the impact of plastic and why reducing and reusing should be your first step before recycling. So plastic takes resources to make, and it funds the petrochemical industry, which means there are related emissions, with the production of it. And, there's a big shift towards EVs and getting away from that industry. But if you buy everything plastic, you're still funding it. And some of you might be aware of that, but some of you might not be aware of just the magnitude of this industry. So just being cognizant of that. And typically, as we've seen, these items are not recycled or reused. They're single use. It's not sustainable. I mean, it's convenient, and that does have its place in our society from time to time, but it is not a sustainable way. Oftentimes they're thrown into landfills, which, as noted, are super emitters of methane. They become marine debris oftentimes, which, if you don't know, that's a fancy way of saying trash in the water. Marine debris has its own associated impacts. It does not biodegrade. So plastic, if you think about it like this, any piece of plastic that was ever made still exists on this earth and will continue to. And it won't biodegrade, but as it continues to break down, it will turn into smaller and smaller pieces, eventually microplastics, which affect our food chains, all the way from microorganisms when the pieces get that small, all the way up to apex predators. And if you know anything about ecology and food chains, when the apex predators are consuming the animals that have all consumed something negative and the apex predators are in danger, there's a lot of problems down the food chain. So, that's just something to think about, how much plastic really affects our lives in all aspects, even things that you might not think affect you, they do affect you. So next, please. Okay, recycling. So if and when you do recycle, let's do it right so that we don't contaminate the load. Up here in the top corner, this is the City of Bowie graphic that we use for it to show you a quick and easy way to see what you can and can't. So metal and aluminum cans, things like, beans, glass bottles and jars, pasta sauces, things like that. Plastic, with the caveat that if you've never done this before, you need to look at the number that's in the recycling symbol. And we accept 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. If you have a 4 or a 6, discard it. Paper, flattened cardboard, not shredded paper. I get asked that a lot. Shredded paper can't really be turned into anything else. So you need things that are structural. So the vast majority of my recycling ends up being flattened things. So I flatten cereal boxes, waffle boxes, fig bar boxes, fruit snack boxes. I mean, everything comes in a paper box. So for me, if I fold it up, I flatten it, I can fill up my bin. It's when you're not taking the time to break it down, they'll still accept it, but it's better for everyone, and you can fit a lot more into your bin, be more efficient if you break these things down, you flatten them. And so things that you can't is obviously food waste, light bulbs, styrofoam, trash it. It's not recyclable. Glass, things like that. Next, please. This is just once more for you to take a look at it. So you can paper, cardboard, glass, aluminum, plastics of the right number. Pizza boxes, this is the one that by far the city gets asked the most. You can recycle a pizza box if it's not soiled. So oftentimes you can rip it, and I find myself ripping off the top to recycle the top that's nice and clean, and the bottom that might have grease or cheese or whatever goes into the trash. If you're a composter, it can also be composted, FYI. In terms of can't, I really want to drive home that you cannot recycle, and you should not recycle napkins or tissues or paper towels. You might think, oh, it's a paper product, I want to recycle it. And that's, it's coming from a good place. But if you start to think about it, what is someone going to do with your old tissue? It can't be made into anything else. And no one wants to touch that. That's just, you're much better off trashing it and putting the right things in your recycling. And so we call that aspirational recycling, when you're hoping it's recyclable and you throw it in there. But that accounts for that little bit over 1,000 tons that were sent to the facility and were incorrect and were then landfilled. So you hope it's recyclable, and your heart's in the right place. But if it's not, it's just not working. And you also want to make sure things are rinsed lightly, because if they still have residue left in them, they can drip and contaminate the load. So a good example is, if you have like a red Gatorade and you're like, oh, I'm done with this plastic water bottle, let me throw it in. If it's going to drip out that red Gatorade and get everything under it sticky and attract bugs, and you've contaminated the load. So that's why I do a quick little rinse and you're ready to go. Next, please. Okay. And last but not least, there are actually more R's, more preventative measures, such as refusing, whether it's refusing to buy it in the first place or refusing it on site, like a plastic straw. Because another really breathtaking stat is that the US uses about 500 million plastic straws a day. That's just the US a day. Because if you think of our population, give or take 400 million, if everyone's going out and getting one drink with a straw in it, think about how many people are going and getting multiple drinks with straws in it. So you can see how it could average about 500 million a day. And those are not recyclable. They're too small. They don't have a number associated with them to make them marketable. So you can refuse those straws. You can refuse things like plastic cutlery that are also not recyclable. Anyways, you can repair, you can rethink, as in like, I don't need to put this in the waste stream at all. I could compost it or whatever. The world is your oyster. But it's really just about not changing your entire life all at once, but starting to think about areas where you can create change. So, oh, I'm sorry. I pressed enter like I was switching slides. Next, please. Turned off my video. Okay, so the key takeaway from this is to reduce and reuse first, specifically in regards to plastic, and then recycle. And when you do it, to do it properly. So I'm going to move on to questions now. I see there are two here. Okay, so Steve, I don't know exactly how much plastic, he's asked how much plastic do people consume in food and drink. I've recently been made aware of how prevalent this issue is, but it's not something that I really know. I've heard a credit card size a day, so this much microplastic. And I've heard, even when you crack the lid of a plastic water bottle, the microplastics are falling in, you're consuming them. Depending on your body, the amount of antioxidants and adaptogens you consume may or may not excrete it as efficiently as other people. And then, that's how people start to get that into their system so much. When a load is contaminated by a greasy pizza box or something with food in it, is the whole load contaminated? No, only the portion that is. So when I say load, I typically mean your own load, unless multiple families' loads were contaminated and Bowie showed up and they're like, this is unacceptable, which isn't typically the problem. But it does happen to a large portion of it, where as they're sifting through, they're like, no, no, no. So, but it certainly could, depending on what spilled. Specifically, probably not a pizza box, but a drink could certainly do that. And does the city recycle Tetra Packs? I don't, the city doesn't, but you can go to Mom's. And maybe when I send the follow-up information in an email, I will look and see what other resources we have for that. But it's not available at the curbside service. And you can take plastic bags to Giant for recycling. Thank you, Ken. And also Harris Teeter. There aren't Food Lions in Bowie. There's a Food Lion by me that has 3 things sitting out there for it. So if you are in a pinch and you didn't bring your reusable bags, they don't have paper, because I've seen that, and you get plastic bags. Or if you're doing a grocery pickup or delivery, it often defaults to plastic. The best bet is to utilize that service at the grocery stores to turn back in your plastic bags. So, are there any other questions? I'm going to send you a lot of information on, plastic, more about recycling, America Recycles Day. You can email me at any time if you just are curious. I've sat on the phone with residents as they've on Zoom actually, as they've shown me objects and asked me yes or no, and I gave them a crash course. So I'm always happy to do that. So if there are no more questions, then this will end the presentation for the day. And I just want to say thank you again to everyone for joining us. And that will conclude it.